Zweig Group invites all AEC industry leaders to the 2024 AEC Small Business and Entrepreneurship Forum, the premier event for small firms in the AEC sector. Experience innovative strategies and insights on May 21st, crafted by Zweig Group's industry experts. Engage in keynotes and interactive sessions focused on recruitment, retention, and business growth. Join Zweig Group for this unique networking opportunity and take your business to new heights. Secure your spot today and be part of the AEC industry's future. Visit zweiggroup.com for more information. The Zweig Group team looks forward to welcoming you.
Welcome to the Zweig Letter Podcast, putting architectural, engineering, planning, and environmental consulting experts straight talk in your ear. These podcasts deliver great interviews with industry leaders and Zweig Group's 3 decades of invaluable research, leadership, management, marketing, client, and HR advice directly to you, free of charge. The Zweig Letter Podcasts let you develop personally and professionally, wherever you are.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Zweig Letter Podcast. I'm your host, Randy Wilburn, and I'm here today with Mitch Fortner from KSA Engineering in Texas. Mitch is an outstanding engineer with over 30 years of experience, and he's also an avid listener of the Zweig Letter Podcast. And we connected online, and I said, we have to get you on the show at some point in time in the near future. And so I'm so excited to have Mitch join us. He is an outstanding engineer, an outstanding leader, and he actually really has some great tips and ideas that I think will be helpful for any design firm, especially those of you that are out here that are regular listeners to the Zweig Letter Podcast. I think there's going to be a lot of meat on those bones for you to take away today, and I hope sincerely that you enjoy this episode of the Zweig Letter Podcast. Mitch, it is great to have you on the show. Thank you so much for making time on your schedule to join us.
Hey, Randy, thanks for having me. I am an avid listener. I enjoy the podcast, and I'm happy to be with you this morning.
So, Mitch, it's great to have you on the show today. Why don't you tell our audience a little bit about your superhero origin story?
Absolutely, Randy. I joke with folks that I grew up in a small community in Northeast Texas that had a population of about 200, and I was kin to about 190 of them. So very small, very close community. Left there in 1980 and went to Texas A&M University. Graduated in civil engineering in 1984 and immediately came to work for KSA in 1984, which was 6 years after the firm had been founded. So I got here pretty early. Worked here until about 88, wound up in Dallas with KSA, and then left KSA and went to work for the Federal Aviation Administration. I loved the people that I worked with there, loved the work. I was a program manager or project manager responsible for airports throughout Louisiana from Alexandria South, including New Orleans International, Lake Charles, Lafayette, Baton Rouge, a number of airports. Grew to have a great affinity for Cajun food during that time, put on about 15 pounds in my travels over a 2 or 3 year period. And the folks here in Longview with KSA invited me to come back to Longview, which worked out very well for me personally, as well as professionally. I was really looking for more of an entrepreneurial pursuit at that point in my life. Looking to do more hands-on work than reviewing other people's work. And so it worked out well for me and who I am. And so in 91, I came back to Longview, spent the next decade or so building an aviation practice and growing that practice here with KSA. Also doing other projects such as large water transmission mains and things of that nature. And had just a great team to work with. Moved into marketing in about 2000, and then in 2015, at the end of the year, we had a scheduled transition, and I became the third president of KSA in the 40-year history of our firm.
Wow. Okay. So you basically it's almost like you went through an engineering boot camp of sorts where you got to try a lot of different areas of the company, and it afforded you the opportunity to really have a different perspective on things, I'm assuming, than a lot of other people do.
Well, I'm not sure about the different perspective, but it was very fascinating moving into marketing after being involved in the production of plans and specs and business development and that sort of thing for many years. And I learned quite a bit about positioning. I joke that I can name all the things that you can do as a marketing professional in the AE industry.
Mm-hmm.
What challenges me, and I think I've talked to Chad about this and maybe Mark at some point, what challenges me is what to do and when, and how do you get your best ROI in a marketing scenario, because there's so many different things you can do. And it's not like engineering where you can calculate a solution to a problem down to the fifth decimal point. You're using a different side of your brain in that part of our business.
Right. Right. No, absolutely. I agree. And, I mean, it's interesting to see. I mean, design firms are rapidly changing, although a lot of the things that people did back in the day are still being done today, which I find to be interesting. So, but I think you have to develop new ideas and new ways to do things without necessarily throwing out some of the foundational truths that make design firms what they are.
Oh, I totally agree. I had someone a few weeks ago. We were talking about the future of KSA and what the KSA of the future might look like. And a very wise individual kind of drew me up short and said, "Mitch, be who you are."
Yeah.
And he was talking about how KSA has traditionally been and what our firm has done and what we've been successful at. And I think that applies in a lot of areas. We're never going to be, in my estimation, a multinational firm, and trying to look or act like one doesn't really make a lot of sense. And so be who you are. That really spoke to me and has given me a lot of food for thought, honestly, over the last 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it sounds like that. And it sounds like that food for thought propelled you to write a really interesting article that I definitely want to talk about. It's something that you had kind of teased me with through a LinkedIn message that you sent me, where you said, "Hey, I've got something that we're working on that when we put it out, I want to share it with you." And I'm so glad that you did. I want to share with our listening audience just a simple paragraph from this that I just kind of really stood out. And it resonated with me for a number of reasons, as I said to you before we started this podcast, because of the importance that my grandparents played in my life and the role models that they were for me. But I also think that there are so many different ways to apply some of these life lessons to a successful and growing design firm. So I just thought I would share this real quick. My grandparents passed away years ago, but I still have very fond memories of my time spent with them on their family ranch in East Texas. My family and extended family hunted together, fished together, ate together, celebrated together, and generally enjoyed life together. Times were different back then, but I believe there is a lot we can learn from our grandparents about being great consulting engineers and architects. And then you go on to talk about a number of different points that I kind of want to bring up during this discussion, because I think it's the kind of thing that we shouldn't forget about. And we need to be reminded that a lot of the life lessons that we have been that have been applied to us over the period of our lives. And I don't know how old you are, but I'm 48, and I've been there, done that, seen a lot. And there are a lot of people listening to this podcast that are younger, in their 20s, and they haven't necessarily been around the block yet, but they are going to have some life lessons and experiences. But I think the important thing about the kind of article that you wrote is that other people's experiences and the life lessons that are passed on can be inherited by anyone that chooses to listen to them.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, and it was really fun to write that article. We kind of brainstormed it as a team here in our office, and got the idea actually from our marketing director. He said, "Man, why don't you talk about your life lessons that have led you to the point where you're at?" And so it was just a lot of fun. As I said on LinkedIn, on one of the comments, it was just great bringing back all those memories and then applying them and realizing that, man, they did have a huge impact on my life and who I am today as a professional and a manager in that regard.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to kind of go through a list of some of those things. And it's something that I talk about a lot. We do a leadership training program here at Zweig Group, and we go around and we're actually going to be doing it in Miami in a couple of weeks, and then in San Francisco at the end of the year. But one of the things that we talk about in leadership training is the importance that real leaders listen. And you talk about that. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, about how your grandparents grew up in a time when people listened to one another, the importance of listening?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I was remembering back to family gatherings at Thanksgiving and Christmas, and I had an aunt and two uncles who had children, and so we would fill up my grandparents' home during these holiday periods, and I had two uncles that loved to basically talk about their hunting episode. Telling the greatest hunting stories from the last year and fishing stories and things of that nature. And we would just sit around as a family and listen to one another. And there were people that really kind of dominated those conversations. We never interrupted them. We never stopped them. But we just listened. And I'll say that I learned a tremendous amount during those times by just listening to the stories. And I believe that has application in what we do as consulting engineers and architects. When we sit down in front of a client, we do our very best work when we listen to their concerns, listen to their desires for their project, and become fully informed from their perspective before we jump in and start trying to solve problems. And so I think that's a real important for all of us to consider as consulting engineers and architects.
Yeah, I always think of that quote: "Seek first to understand before being understood." So I think I think it's perfect. So you also go on to say, and again, there's just so many really great lessons in this article. And I really, again, I want to encourage everyone that's listening to this podcast. This will be in the show notes. Please read this article when you can. Share it at one of your next meetings with your team, because you will find that it will resonate with a majority of the people that listen. But you said that my parents and grandparents lived during the Great Depression and learned when something was broken, you fixed it. We should be looking for ways to conserve resources and rehabilitate existing facilities, and to always determine if there is value in the facilities and infrastructure that is worth salvaging. That's huge, because everybody wants to build something big and brand new and, some new edifice to something. This whole idea of conserving and rehabilitating things, I wish it would take on more than it has, but I think it's something that, firms in the design industry should be reaching towards that type of goal or objective, as opposed to just instantly saying, well, we'll build something brand new. You don't always have to build something new.
Well, I'm very proud of our industry. I think we're moving in this direction, and especially with the concept of sustainable design and LEED facilities of that nature. we've come a long way, but I like to tell people that civil engineers, if you just want to take one discipline, we're green before green was cool.
Right.
Because in a lot of ways, we recycle pavement materials and have been for many, many, many years. It's been a big part of, if you go in and bust up the existing pavement, lay it back down as a reclaimed base, maybe stabilize it. We're reusing and recycling, and so it's exciting to see that kind of thing happen, where you don't just throw the baby out with the bathwater and start from scratch all over again. It's good to get the value that's left in whatever piece of infrastructure or facility that you're working on. You can apply the same sort of principles to water treatment plant design, wastewater treatment plant design. There's a time when you do have to move on, if you're land constrained or whatever, but many times we can just modify what's there, rehabilitate, renovate, and come up with a plant that meets the design criteria.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, you said a mouthful there. I mean, I think it's just something that we shouldn't forget. I know, people get paid to design new things, but sometimes we can get paid to rehabilitate things that already exist and make them even better. So, and I think, and we're in a society nowadays where we have to be careful because we're running out of space to throw things away. So it's becoming a problem. So
yeah,
it's becoming a problem. You mentioned something else in this article that Mark Zweig is always driving home, which is that you've got to pick up the phone and talk to people. One of the things that you talked about was your grandparents' desire to maintain close relationships, and that represented itself. And your example was essentially the ability for individuals in a design firm to reach out and stay in contact with their clients, go visit the client. Talk about the importance of that.
Well, absolutely. We have these internal discussions within our company, and I posted something on our intranet the other day that was very similar to this, and I specifically asked one of our project managers in one of the comments, what would happen if we completely ignored a client once we were awarded a contract? What if we never gave them any updates? What if we never went to see them? What if we never listened to them? What if we never gave them a set of review plans to look over and then sat down with them and went through their thoughts and their comments on that? What would happen? And immediately he said, well, we wouldn't be their engineer for very long, would we? And that's absolutely right, because you had part of the engineering and architectural professions is that we are inherently in a people business.
Yeah.
We have to work very closely with our clients. So number one, we're not going to come up with a very good solution for them. But number two, if we don't, somebody else will. And that's what I tell people all the time. If you're not taking care of your client, then somebody else will. Absolutely. And it does not take very long for that to happen in this competitive environment that we're in.
Yeah, absolutely. And persistence pays off too. I mean, staying in touch with someone, even if they don't have work for you right now, you don't want to make it. And I'm saying this all the time when I do project management training, when I do leadership training. Stop making everything transactional in nature. Build relationships.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, I agree. Totally.
Build relationships, because even if somebody doesn't have something for you today, it doesn't mean they won't have something for you tomorrow. And I really encourage people to do that. And I'm always reminded of a story that Chad Kleinens, who is our CEO and president, shared about a local airport that he was working with in Oklahoma when he was there working with his former company as an engineer. And, he would stay in touch with this airport authority, and they had an engineer. They had an engineer, and they had an engineer for years, 15 years. I mean, they'd had the same engineer for 15 years. And each year they renewed the contract. But one year, Chad had just stayed in contact with these guys. And one year, the contract lapsed. And I guess for whatever reason, the engineering company just didn't follow through with a quick enough proposal to renew. And Chad just happened to be in the right place at the right time. And because he had built a relationship that wasn't just transactional, that wasn't just, what can you do for me? He was there to pick up the pieces and say, hey, we'll take it on and we'll do it. And they got the project.
Yeah. Yeah, and I bet there was a huge celebration back at the office when that happened.
I'm sure there was. I'm sure there was. I mean, and for those that don't know Chad Kleinens, he is probably one of the most inspirational and he determined individuals. And so, he's the picture of that, of staying in contact with somebody and building relationships. And so that's why, I'm so honored to have him as a leader of this firm, and because he really does practice what he preaches. And, he picked up some of that from Mark, but that was some of that he obviously picked up from somebody along the way, one of his mentors or leaders that, taught him the importance of staying in touch with clients, potential clients, building relationships when and where possible, because you just never know where they will lead.
Yes, totally. I totally agree. Yep.
Yeah. So listen, I want to talk about another thing. And I know you guys KSA is about 150 people now, or?
Yep, about
Okay.
150.
Okay, great. And you have how many offices?
We have 11 offices.
Okay. How do you, as the leader of KSA, and this will be good for some people listening to this, how do you reach out and mentor these people? I mean, clearly you can't mentor every single person at KSA, but I know you have a top tier of leadership that you probably mentor, and you speak into their lives and you encourage them at the high moments and at the low moments. But as a leader, how do you, because you talk about this in your article, but you talk about the importance of mentoring. How do you develop that mentoring mindset at KSA?
Well, that's a great question, and it's something that we work on and are very intentional about, because it's so important, especially today as we bring in younger professionals into the company. It's just so important. So, first off, I've got a great team. Our service group directors are outstanding. They've all been in the business for a very long time. They've been there, done that, and they're very good at transferring that data. I'm thinking of one in particular that he came to work as an EIT straight out of college, and he tells the story that one of his first projects, he was working with me on a airfield guidance sign replacement project, counting signs, and so he has seen the benefit of working alongside someone and what that can do. So he's very good at putting that into practice with our younger staff. For me personally, it's a matter of communication. We have an intranet here. I try to just be real on our intranet with people and share data, but also share concepts. Like we just had a big discussion about communication within our company. We're having an internal discussion about corporate culture right now, inviting comments from throughout the company to really talk about what they see as our corporate culture, what are our corporate values. And so some of this happens electronically. Try to stay in touch and go visit those offices as often as time allows. Also have some of our administrative directors that I've encouraged to be out communicating in the offices, to go from office to office. It's very difficult as you grow. We started off with one office in 1978, and back then it was real easy to see what the leaders of the company were doing, what the priorities were, the things that we were going after, all of the projects that we were working on, and so it's very easy at that level of a company to communicate and keep everybody on the same page. As you grow, it becomes more difficult. And, at 150 employees, we're not anywhere near the multinational or national. I don't even, I can't imagine how they are able to communicate and keep everybody on the same page at that level, because even at 150, it's very difficult. But I think number one, not just sitting in your office and hibernating, but being out among the people and talking, participating in project pursuits with them is a great way to do that. Just being active, and going to visit with them and having a meal with them and talking through what's going on.
Man, you sound like you've read from the Mark Zweig playbook of how you mentor people, because that's all he talks about is management by walking around, which in this day and age, Mitch, let's face it, it's difficult, right? Because you have, what do you say, 11 offices?
You're right. 11
Yeah.
offices.
So how do you, I mean, you can't walk around all 11. I mean, it's that other, I'm sure your family wouldn't like you on a plane every other day going someplace. I think the challenge is that as mentors, as leaders, you have to find ways to be creative, to check in with your folks, even when you can't physically be in their presence. And one of the things that I've learned lately is just the importance of the simple online check-in. Message somebody, send somebody a text, send somebody a word of encouragement. Hey, hope things are going well. I know you've got a big project due this week, or I know you've got a big proposal going out this week. You're going to kill them. You're going to knock them dead. So that it's not this out of sight, out of mind. Well, I'm not there, so I can't really provide them with some support. Sometimes just an encouraging word is enough to get somebody over the hump.
Yeah, two-way communication is critical. We also do things like, if there's some topic that we feel very passionate about, we'll do a video. Our marketing team is great at shooting a video of me communicating to the company, and then we get that out. I've heard a lot of very good comments and feedback on that. They're able to sit at their desk and listen to that. They don't have to watch it, but they can just listen to it or whatever as they're working on something else. And it's a great way to continue to try to focus the company and move together as an organization.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I love hearing that. I can't wait to hear some more stories about how the mentoring is impacting KSA in the future. There was another thing that really stood out to me that you mentioned, and you tell a story about your grandfather was the owner of a local general store in that small community of about 200 people, and that he always went above and beyond to deliver groceries to the people that were sick or shut in, and that he offered store credit to people, and one of the big takeaways from that is the importance of community. How are you in this day and age, in this old internet society that we're in, where everything is such instant gratification? How are you fostering a sense of community at KSA?
Well, we're working on that. I mentioned this discussion about corporate values and company culture, and I'll just be real candid. It's easy to lose sight of shared values and a shared culture when you spread out to 11 offices. I mean, you see how that dilutes the culture. It dilutes the shared values. And so we're fostering an internal discussion right now at this very moment from the board level down throughout the organization about what do we aspire to be as a company in terms of values and culture. And one of the things I did say in that little article was that one size doesn't fit all.
Right.
And that was something that I did learn from my grandfather. I remember riding in his old truck with 2 sacks of groceries between us to a lady that was unable to get out of her house and come to the store, and he would deliver them, and she was just so appreciative. And so I think that applies with employees as well as our clients. Not all clients are the same. Not all employees are the same. And you can't treat everybody exactly the same way. For instance, if you try to work through a design process with with clients exactly the same way every time without considering their perspective and how they like to work. How do they like to communicate? We've got so many different ways of communicating these days.
Yeah.
Emails and text and phone calls, and some people are still using fax machines.
What's that?
Yeah, exactly. But what you realize is that everybody has a preference in how they like to communicate, and so our job as consultants is figure that out and not try to make them conform to us, but to be flexible and meet them where they're at in how we communicate. And so that's just one example of the kind of discussions that we're having here within our company is how do we serve our clients in a way that they will appreciate and what makes their job easier. So those are just some examples of things we're talking about.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, I mean, and for anybody listening, and for you as well, Mitch, I mean, it's not easy. It is a process. It requires time. It requires effort. Blood, sweat, and tears to kind of make it work. I think that's the biggest challenge that a lot of design firms are facing nowadays, especially those like KSA that are trying to grow, but are still trying to keep their identity intact.
Right.
So
absolutely, yeah. You be you. That's again. It comes back. That was just so profound. Three little words.
Yeah.
That you don't try to be something that you're not. You be you. But KSA has a strong history of very deep relationships with our clients. Repeat business is huge with us, and so how do you translate that to a larger firm and continue to push that down throughout the organization and have your project managers understand, hey, that's what brought us here. And that's one of the things that's going to keep us moving forward is developing and maintaining these very strong relationships.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, that's it perfectly. I can't think of a better way to kind of wrap this up. I really appreciate you coming on. I do want to just stop for a minute just so that people know that you're a human being. So why don't you tell us a little bit about some of the things that really excite you? What is the most recent book that you read lately?
Well, I'm reading a book right now that's called Culture Wins, and I can't remember the author right now, but it's a fairly new book that just came out. I have a very eclectic reading list.
Okay.
I generally enjoy nonfiction. One of my favorite books that's not specifically related to the industry was Shoe Dog that I read last year, the story of Phil Knight and how he founded
yes, I know
Nike.
that book. Yeah.
Nike, man, that thing was just amazing and such a fun read. But I love to read business biographies, historical biographies, and also when I get on a roll with an idea, I start searching out books. Like right now, as I've discussed, the culture issue is huge, and what does that mean for the generation that's coming behind us that are different fundamentally than the greatest generation? And what does corporate leadership look like under the millennial generation?
Right.
And how do we begin to pave the way for that?
Yeah.
And so that's a huge interest of mine right now. It's something that I'm trying to wrap my brain around. And so I'm reading books on corporate culture and values and the millennial generation and trying to figure that out.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Do you have any big plans for the summer at all? Any special trips?
Oh, not yet. My wife and I love to travel. We love to go up to Colorado, and we have 2 children left at home, and 2 that are married and moved out. So our traveling kind of revolves around our children at this point, and so we'll formulate that as we get a little closer to the end of school, I'm certain.
Okay, cool. All right. And my last question, and I don't know if this even applies to you, but are you a DC guy or are you a Marvel guy?
Well, My son is both.
Okay.
I have a 14-year-old son, and I think he's enough of both of those for both me and him. Uh, he loves those movies. He loves to talk about it. He's all about that kind of stuff.
Oh, well, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, great. I'm sure he's excited about this new Infinity Wars movie coming out in a couple of weeks. So,
Yeah. I've heard about that.
Yeah. So very cool. Well, listen, Mitch, I really appreciate this. I also want to just give a quick shout out because I thought this was really interesting when you wrote this article and you put it out there. You highlighted the other individuals that helped you out, and it speaks volumes about who you are as an individual. But you had some other people collaborate with you on this article. Hunter Hilburn, who is the director of marketing there at KSA, Susan Bickham, who is the director of finance and administration, April Barker, the HR specialist, and Caroline Horton, who is a content generation specialist. Just want to give them a quick shout out for playing part in this, what I think is going to be what we would call an evergreen article that's going to stand the test of time. So I really want to encourage everyone to check this article out from Mitch and from his team at KSA and what those guys are doing there in Texas. And I'm sure this is the last that you're going to hear about these guys. They've been on the ENR Top 500. They've been a hot firm. They've been a best company to work for in Texas. There's a lot of great things happening at KSA. And Mitch, we are really appreciative of you coming on today and spending a little bit of time with us here at the Zweig Letter Podcast. So thank you so much.
My pleasure, Randy. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, folks, I just really appreciate you guys listening to this episode of the Zweig Letter Podcast. I hope you took something away from what Mitch and I had to talk about today. We talked about so much. We talked about community. We talked about mentoring. We talked about just leadership in general and so many different things that you can be doing within your organization to foster growth, not just for yourself as a leader, but for your team, as well as the impact that your organization will make in the community that you serve. And so we hope that this was helpful for you. Remember, the Zweig Letter Podcast is available every week. We publish around noontime, Central Standard Time, every Friday. And so we hope that you will take time out of your busy schedule to listen to the Zweig Letter Podcast and also want to offer you a special gift. And that gift is simply a free digital subscription to the Zweig Letter. That's right. You've heard it here. The Zweig Letter digital subscription is now free. If you can visit zweiggroup.com and just click on the Zweig Letter icon, you can input your email address and we will every Monday morning send you a fresh off the presses copy of the Zweig Letter in digital version. Just imagine 12 pages of some of the best writing and content for the design industry. The Zweig Letter has been published continuously since 1992, and I really want to encourage you to check it out when you can. And Mitch, I don't know, do you subscribe to the Zweig Letter now?
Absolutely.
Okay,
yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, do you have your whole team getting the Zweig Letter?
Not at this point.
I can make that happen for you. We can work it out. So
keep talking about it.
Yeah,
we'll definitely have to do it.
We'll figure it out. But yeah, so the point of the matter simply is for anybody listening to this podcast, whether it's just an individual or if you'd like to get your whole team, you can even submit everybody's email address, and each person will get a fresh copy of the Zweig Letter Podcast every morning, every Monday at noontime. And again, you can always unsubscribe if you'd like, but I doubt that will ever happen because there's such good information there. And if nothing else, you can read the fantastic article that Mark Zweig writes every week. He writes an editorial for the Zweig Letter, and Mark always has something great to say. So just really want to encourage you to do that. Thank you so much again for listening to this episode of the Zweig Letter Podcast. The Zweig Letter Podcast is available wherever great podcasts can be found: Stitcher, iTunes, SoundCloud. We will soon be on Spotify, as well as so many other sites and locations, Google Play. So check us out when you can, and also rate us on your favorite podcast app. And we'd love a 5-star rating. Let us know what you like about the podcast. If it's made a difference in your work life, if it's made a difference in your personal life, we'd love to hear from you. We really do appreciate our listeners. And every day, just like the message I got from Mitch a couple of weeks ago, we hear from people that have been impacted by the Zweig Letter Podcast. And so we thank you so much. We really appreciate our listening audience. Listen, I'm your host, Randy Wilburn, And more than anything else, I really do appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Zweig Letter Podcast. We will be back right here next week with some more great content for you to take in. Remember, we exist to make you more successful. Go out and conquer the world. Take care.
Thanks for tuning in to this Zweig Letter Podcast episode. If you want more wisdom and inspiration, in addition to information about M&A, strategic planning, HR, and marketing your firm, subscribe now to the digital version of the Zweig Letter free of charge. Just visit thezweigletter.com/subscribe and leave your email address. Your free subscription will begin immediately.